So the Rockets played the Washington Wizards yesterday in a game that was filled with a lot of ugly offense. We were still able to get the dub, so shout out to the team for that. Not the greatest offensive showing. Obviously, missing Fred VanVleet was a kind of a detriment to our team's structure. The little bit that is there. I think we probably had our worst offensive game of the season. Might be one of the ugliest in the Udoka era. But we were still able to get the dub off of Alperen Sengun, Tari Eason, Amen, the usual suspects. The guys that usually come in did well. A couple of guys struggled, but overall the team did what they were supposed to do. Held the Wizards to only, 92 points. Now the Wizards aren't exactly the best team in the league, right? This is probably one of the worst teams and one of the worst offenses. One of the few teams that shoots worse than us. Them and Portland are right there with us in shooting. So, like I said, whenever you play these teams that are what I call run heavy, we are going to get the dub. We are going to get the dub. It's great to see Sengun come back to form, seeing how he was able to offensively go at a rookie. You expect him to destroy those matchups. And in retrospect, when you think about it now, with his matchups against Wemby and Chet, it kind of makes sense why he struggled. Those guys are on the front line of being Defensive Player of the Year candidates. So it kind of makes sense. Early season, still getting his wind, tough matchups, guys that are 7'2", 7'4". Now you're starting to look at when he plays regular size centers or guys that aren't that good, he destroys them. So as the time goes on, what you want from him is to be able to raise his game to the point where he's not going to destroy like the Chets of the world and those heavily, defensively focused centers, but you got to be able to at least get your baseline or a little bit better. So, just from that standpoint, I think it was good. Him having 27 and 10, just all around good game from him. Low key, without P, he's kind of been one of our best defenders on the team. Like, this was something that was a knock on him coming in as a rookie. And now you look at him, the way he moves. I put a tweet out saying this, that I'm watching this on a day-to-day basis all season. He has been really solid on defense, like above average to say, like really above average. I mean, when you look at the metrics for it, he is one of our best defenders on the team along with Dylan Brooks. And when he's not on the court, and we'll look at some of that in a little bit, the team really struggles on that end. It could be the fact that he is much, much better. Plus his replacements aren't that good. Like when it comes to defense, Steven Adams is great for screening, but anything else, he can pass a little bit. Defense has been atrocious there. Jock Landale is literally hit or miss, and you miss a lot. So the whole comment about having the best center rotation in the league was cap. Let's throw that out there real quick. But Sengun's defense, the ability to guard in the pick and roll, I've mentioned that earlier in the season. His ability to be able to not only stay in front of the ball handlers on those screens that are called, play kind of a shallow drop where he's almost at the level of the screen, maybe not right there, but also recover back to his assignment. That's a leap that he's taken in being able to read that a little bit better this year. And we're not getting lobs over our heads. And we played some lob heavy centers in the past few games. His ability to trap and close in space with aggression, not being so scared and passive to get beat to the corner. So he's able to move his feet, because when you trap a ball handler, we've seen Jalen attack bigs that are slower. You could try to trap them, but if these guards are so quick that they hit that corner, they're gone. And that trap just means that now you got 5-on-3. So his ability to cut off those angles and really make the trap effective is a big plus for him. His ability to close out is really improved. His ability to stay vertical on drives. He's like top 10 in the league and defending the rim right now. Low volume, I expect that to even out a little bit more as the season goes along, where he may drop a little bit. But this is the Marc Gasol method of defense, where it's not that you got to be a good athlete. You don't have to be, jumping out the roof or have the longest arms in the world. Can you put your big body in position? That's what he's doing. He's putting his big body in position. That comes with anticipation. It comes with footwork. He's able to cut off drivers, even in isolation. When he switched out, I've seen many plays of players actually kick the ball out instead of hunting Sengun. There was one yesterday in Washington. I think it was Jordan Poole or one of their shifty guards had Sengun on isolation, but they elected to go to, I forgot who it was. Maybe it was like Kyle Kuzma or somebody in the post up, which it could be just CTE on their part. That could be just Wizard CTE. But overall, it's just his defense has really been a plus for the team. If he was struggling as much as he was offensively to start the season, and then his defense compiled being bad, then he would have been unplayable. But one of the things that for me, when I watch these guys, when I watch young players, and one thing we can give Ime Udoka credit for, the offense is bad. And we're going to get into the numbers of how we're looking this season. Missed a 10-game mark for the updates on the lineups and all that. We're going to do it for 11 games. Since the 10th game fell on the back-to-back, there was no reason to do that. One thing Ime does really well, even though his offense is anathema, even though it is ugly, at the end of the day, he makes the players well-rounded. He makes them well-rounded. Most of our players, as poorly as they're struggling, are still positives on the floor. They are still doing other things, whether it's rebounding, playing defense, being able to run in transition. All of these things are leaps that they have all taken under Coach Udoka. I know we do give him grief, and sometimes rightfully deserved, but we have to also keep that in mind. We have to keep that in mind that Jalen Green, even though he's struggling, still a positive on the court. Alperen Sengun, even though he struggled offensively, has been one of the most impactful bigs in the NBA up until now. When you look at the advanced statistics, same thing for all the players, even Jabari to a lesser extent. So keep that in mind. So now we're going to get into our 11 game sample size to see what are the lineups looking like? What are the players looking like? Who are our most valuable players on this team? Just to get an update. And this is something that I did last season, more frequent last season, 5 game sample sizes. I'm going to move it up to 10 because there's so much noisy data right now because the team plays so Jekyll and Hyde. I think 10 game is a good sample. It's 11 because the 10th game was on the back-to-back. So what we're going to do is look at lineup data and just, draw some conclusions from there. So y'all check it out. And I haven't done one of these in a while. So if you guys love numbers and love basketball statistics and you're a nerd like that, tap in and enjoy it.
This is something I know.
Okay, first off, we're going to do some housekeeping stats just to show us where we are at right now. So right now, currently, the Rockets have a 112.6 offensive rating, which ranks 16th. I know we were top 10 in offense maybe a few games ago, but, with the sample size being so small, over each game and as new data comes in, it's going to change. You really don't get stuck in a groove or where you're going to be till like the middle of the season. So right now, game-to-game variations really impact these numbers. 16th is about where we were last year for the season. 112.6 offensive rating is slightly below where we were. I think last season we finished out at roughly 113. So, it is still the same thing, ugly on offense. Defensive rating right now, the Rockets rank 3rd in the NBA, 107.2, which is really, really good. That's elite. That is elite. And that Wizards game really gave us a big boost on that defensive rating. So this is something that, like I said, we're going to have to hang our hat on playing defense. The guys are going to have to be scrapping. When we look at some of the lineup data, you'll see kind of the things I've been saying, how they kind of come to fruition with the team. We have the 7th best net rating at 5.4 in the NBA. During this stretch of games, the first 11 games, points per game, 111.4, ranked 17th, which is slightly below where we were last year. EFG, we ranked 28th. So EFGs are 2s and 3s. This is your team's average percentage on shooting 2s and 3s. 28th at 49.5%, which is horrible. True shooting, 53.2, we ranked 29th, right in front of the Portland Trailblazers, who ranked 30th. Not great. This is not the marks of a playoff team right now. These numbers have to greatly improve because, what happens in the playoffs is defenses get better and shooting actually drops. So we are already in the basement. If we get any lower, we're going to be in hell. So we have to, I'm assuming at some point we're going to regress back to the mean and be somewhere right below league average, which for us would be a hell of an improvement. But 53% true shooting, which resembles that of a rookie point guard for a team, is not great. But the defense has been good. We've been holding teams to really low percentages at the rim. We've been holding teams to low percentages, really multiple parts of the core doing good. And some of our transition defense, our offense is really not great right now, but we're getting it out the mud. And this is what I'm talking about when I say that there is a baseline play style we have, which is play hard, run in transition, stop teams on defense, play gritty. And that's going to beat the Wizards of the world. The problem with that style is that when you play actually elite teams, that doesn't work, because not only do they play hard, they play smart and they're efficient. And that's just going to beat grit any day. So just some things to keep an eye on. Hopefully these numbers change the next time we do one of these videos. Okay, now let's get into the fun part, looking at lineup data. And I'm going to look at first the starting five. The starting five so far is a plus 9.9 net rating, 115.3 on offense, 105.3 on defense. Our starting five is still pretty elite. This is plus 9.9 in a per 100 possession. This is from Cleaning the Glass. Our starters are still pretty elite, even with the struggles of Fred VanVleet and Jabari Smith Jr. And they are struggling, and you'll see that in a second. The second most possessions lineup that we have is the lineup of Jalen Green, Amen Thompson, Dylan Brooks, Jabari Smith Jr., and Alperen Sengun. This lineup in 36 possessions is a plus 48.2. So this speaks to two things. One, the impact of Amen Thompson. Two, the struggles of Fred VanVleet. It is such an impactful lineup that it is actually helping Jabari. Look at Jabari in this lineup contributing to a 48.2 net rating. Look at that defensive rating at 65, which is stupid, right? We know the sample size of 36 games is it's nothing, like, it's not irrelevant, but it isn't enough to really make any decisions either way about. Usually you want to get to about 100 when you're doing the points per possession, because 100 is the actual threshold to get a full rate for that, and a full rate that you can generate most benchmarks from other lineups, other teams from, and that threshold is important, because that's a significant amount. That's about a full game or so of worth of possession. So 48.2 is really, really good. I want you guys to just keep a mental picture of what we're seeing with these lineups. Once again, the second most possessions, so if you're listening to the audio of this, is 36 possessions with Jalen Green at point guard, Amen Thompson at 2 guard, Dylan Brooks at the 3, Jabari at the 4, and Sengun at the 5. That is a plus 48.2 for that lineup. Now, when I look at lineups that are greater than 25 possessions, which is about the lineups, we don't really deviate much from our starting five. The most you're going to get is 30-something as far as the second to bench units. Ime has been mixing and matching so much this season that we don't have a lot of solid backup data for our second units or third units. It's really like we have like 15 second units, so they're all pretty close. So 25 is roughly about the average cutoff point for those units that have significant or similar amount of possessions played. The worst lineup over 25 possessions is Fred, Jalen, Amen, Dylan, and Jabari Smith at the 5. This lineup is really has struggled. Look at it, minus 47.9. It struggled on offense, and I have some theories about this. Just from looking up other data, I have some theories about this. One, with the lack of structure. Once again, this goes back to Ime Udoka's ability to have an offensive philosophy. Our offense is incredibly reliant on the players' autonomy and their decision making. And you look at this lineup, you got Fred VanVleet, who's struggling this year. You got Jalen, who's been up and down this year, so that already drags the lineup down. You have Amen Thompson, who is not an offensive player. On offense, he's been pretty bad this season. Dylan Brooks is the one positive offensive player, but his decision making is questionable at that. And then Jabari Smith is struggling. So on this lineup, there's really nothing positive offensively that you could really glean from it. In theory, this is what Ime would like to close out with, where you could swap out possibly Amen for Jabari Smith, which makes a huge difference. But this lineup so far to date, as we have played it, has not been good. And this is some of the games we've lost late where he tries to go small. This is not it, right? Like we need to stop doing that anticipatory, let's go small, because in theory, it's a good defensive lineup. The problem is the defense is good. It's not that good. It's pretty good compared to some of the other lineups, but the offense is in the sewers. So we can't score in clutch moments, in closing moments. And we've seen this, and it usually doesn't end up too good for us. So that's the worst lineup over 25. The best lineup over 25 possessions, Jalen Green at the point guard, Amen Thompson at the 2, Dylan Brooks at the 3, Tari Eason at the 4, and Alperen Sengun at the 5. This is some people's dream starting lineup. I wouldn't mind it. I wouldn't mind it. You think, why does this lineup work? Look at the offensive points per possession, 167.7, which is nuts. A defensive 75. So this lineup has been putting in work. They've been putting belt to ass. BTA on this lineup, plus 92.7. This ideally, theoretically, is the perfect lineup for, the Rockets. And if you had to make an ideal with Sengun out there, look at this lineup. You have 3 ultra positive defenders. Dylan Brooks has been a positive defender this year for the most part, with Amen and Tari with their synergy out there. And then you have a Jalen Green out there that is a positive to neutral to positive defender on most nights, and a guy that is dynamic, getting downhill to the bucket, able to shoot on most nights. He's struggling right now, but this lineup is diverse. It's dynamic, but it also features the 2-man game with Jalen and Sengun. So you get a half court set there that gives you baseline of at least you have something to run. And then you have the 2 transition demons with Amen and Tari Eason that give you that chaotic defensive presence on the court where they're ripping dudes and getting steals and getting rebounds and running with Jalen there. And then Dylan offers some shooting. So if the Rockets wanted to take a picture of what their ideal build to maximize Jalen and Sengun, it'll look something like this. You got backcourt defense, wing defense. You got a pretty mobile center that's able to move around and navigate and uses IQ to get steals and blocks and things like that. On the offensive side, you mitigate some of the slow pace that you would see with a Fred VanVleet, that you would see out there, and some of the lack of shooting and dynamic ability on the offensive side with Jabari. And this is what you get. You get a really, really good lineup. And the Fred VanVleet thing, I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. I think that, yes, he's struggling. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I think there's a little bit more to why Fred is struggling and the team is and we'll see, is better when he's not out there right now at this moment in the season. This is not a referendum on Fred VanVleet as a point guard or as a player in the NBA. He's having a rough stretch. The team is going through some changes. I think it's just kind of a perfect synergy of bad stuff for us right now that's not working out for him particularly. But the best lineup, once again, is Jalen Green, Amen Thompson, Dylan Brooks, Tari Eason, Sengun, with a plus 92 net rating, and the worst being the Fred VanVleet, Jalen, Amen, Dylan, and Jabari at the 5 at minus 47.9. Okay, let's move on. Looking at on-off impact. So let me preface this. Guys, I know it's tempting. Do not use this for your agendas, please. Last season, when we looked at some of this data early on in the season, it was all over the place. Fred was a huge negative. This guy was a positive. Dylan was like the MVP. And by the middle of the season, all of that was flipped. So once again, keep the data that it's still a small sample in size, and guys are going to shake back. They're going to get better. We just have to just be patient. Be patient with them. But on-off impact, let's start with Fred VanVleet, the man of the hour. On court, when he is on the court, the Rockets are plus 3.6 net differential. So we're still winning games by 3.6 points per possession. But when he is off the court, we are actually better at plus 11.3. And this meets the eye test that we have. And, you guys know I like to do this. I like to take each individual starter, take them out the starting lineup, and then see what the starting lineup looks like without them and anybody else. So if you take Fred VanVleet out the lineup, the starting 5, and you put any other body in that starting 5, it could be anybody from any of the lineups we've had this year, sad to say the team is a plus 34.6 in those 47 possessions. That is very significant. So that just shows you how much he struggled this year. And I mean, it's kind of, I'll explain. I have a theory about it, but yeah, plus 34.6. The numbers speak for themselves when Fred is not on the court. Moving on to Dylan Brooks. When he's on the court, we're a plus 12.8 points per possession, better than our opponents. When he is off the court, we're a minus 9.1. So that is damn near a 30-point differential net for him on and off the court. Dylan is really, really hooping this year. The shooting has been hit or miss, but I think just him being a player, especially with the ability to be a point of attack defender on other opposing bigs, is really opened up our defense to a different level. And it's allowed Sengun to roam and use more of his IQ and body movement rather than being in every action. And shout out to Uncle Mike as far as with Sengun defense, we were talking, me and my friend Mike on Twitter were talking about this yesterday, about Sengun's kind of how he is able to benefit from his defensive, kind of the playmaking that he has on defense this year, his ability to play defense, and how that impacts his offense. And I agree. He brought this up. I've thought about this. I actually think that one of the reasons he's struggling on offense is because he's playing just more on defense, and the fact that he is also our offensive, screen setter, and he's in every action. So literally, Sengun is in every action. He's on the court on offense. And now that he is actually he is moving on defense. He's everywhere. He's closing out. He's guarding in isolation, guarding the post. He's in the pick and roll action. He is always moving, always moving. Whereas you think about guys like Jabari, you think about Jalen, on some plays, those guys, they may just stand in the corner and just watch Sengun set about 10 screens because our guards don't know what to do, and then sprint down to the other end after getting a rebound to then get into a pick and roll where they want to use him and attack him in a pick and roll. He got to move his feet. They get a stop. He runs to the other end. Now you got to set 10 more screens. That is why dude is getting tired. He probably works the most of any of the players on the team, and he's the biggest body that we have out there most times. So keep that in mind. I agree. Mike had brought that up. That is something that your win has to get used to that. And when you're going to be a two-way player like he's been this year, it's not something that's easy to do. It takes a special type of player. You watch Jokic or any of these other guys, they don't really do all that. Jokic just plays the drop. He chills. You look at Vooch or any of these centers, they just drop and they chill. The guys that are playing both ways and are in every action, you think of Anthony Davis, these type of guys, Bam, really more slender, athletic. So he's pushing his body to a new level. And I think him cutting weight, getting cut and being a more mobile is going to help him do that. Now he just got to play himself into that shape where his defense is great. His offense will be great like it was against Washington, but on a night-to-night basis. But just all that to say, Dylan is doing great, helping out with that. When you can put Dylan on the opposing five, it really does open up a lot of stuff. So when you take Dylan out to starting five, it's only a plus 6.4. And so we're better with, when he's out there. We're not better when he's on the court, when he's off the court, but the team isn't crashing out. It isn't crashing out. So with Fred, it was a plus 30, whatever. That means we're way better when he's not in the starting five. When you take him out, we're still better with the starting five, but it's not like anything crazy because you think, who's his replacement? It's either going to be a Man or Tari, right? So those are really, really high impact players. So I don't really fault him for having a plus when he is not in the starting five. I think he's been great. Alperen Sengun on court plus 11.6. When he is off the court, we are at minus 2.9. So the team is losing by 2.9 points per possession when he is off the court, winning by plus 11. And when you take Sengun out the starting lineup, we are losing the game by minus 39.4. This is including all his poor offensive showings. He has just been, like I said, advanced stats, eye test, his defense, rebounding, all the other things that Ime has really cultivated out of him. It has really elevated his impact on winning to a different level. The offense is going to be the icing on the cake. If he can get to a level of offense that he was last season, not even better, just where he is with the defense he's playing now, he might be a top 3 or 4 center in the league, just outright, because the impact is just there. Guys are going away from him on defense. So when he is not there, this also speaks to how bad our center rotation is, whether it's going to be Steven Adams, who is still getting back from injury, or Jock Landale, who's hit or miss. Minus 39.4 is nuts. We literally cannot afford for him to sit in any capacity right now. So when you're looking at these lineups, think about what are some of the things that we need to address by the trade deadline. One of them may be to get a center, right? We need to get a center. So that disparity that can't happen because he's not playing 48 minutes. Either we need to find a different lineup or we need to just get a different backups to come in at center. I would even try Uncle Jeff at some point, but that is a crazy number. Jabari Smith, when he's on the court, he is a plus 0.5, so he's almost a flat. So he's not hurting us. Doesn't really help too much, but he's not hurting us, which for him is a positive, right? When he's off the court, we are a plus 15. So this is why I was saying, and you look at when he is without, not on the starting five, we're a plus 16.7, which is not as bad as Fred's, but is still pretty significant. You know what I mean? I think this is what I was saying when I advocated for him to come off the bench because I think that you insert Tari or Amen in those units, mostly Tari, then you really give your starting five a big boost. And then, you're able to start off games faster. You don't really have that lag, and you don't expect much from your bench. Your bench job should not be to save you. Your bench job is to keep the lead you've built, or, they can have their random games where the bench goes off, but we shouldn't rely on the bench to be the heroes. Then something's wrong there with the starting five. Like, your starters is to set the tempo for the game, set the standard, and the bench is supposed to either keep it or expand it. Too many points in this season, we are relying on bench to come and save us. And I don't like that. I don't think that's something that's indicative of a good playoff team that's going to make a long run. We need to be able to have a real strong starters because you want those guys that are starting, in most cases, to close out. Like, it's very rare that a team starting five is not the starting five that closes. I know coaches go to certain matchups, but we can't just close with different players every night. It's not sustainable. But yeah, so Jabari, just like Fred, the team is better. Is better when he's off the court because he's struggling. That's one of the players that's struggling right now. And then last but not least on this part, Jalen Green on court is a +5. When he's off court, the team is a +8.7. So it's about a 3-point difference. Given his struggles, not too bad. It's kind of pretty much even with him out there. You look at some of the lineup data with Jalen. When you take him and you take him off the court, it really overall, not just on the starting five, the team does suffer. But you can see it when he's not in the starting five, though. We are at -16.3. So second most impactful starter besides Alperen Sengun. So y'all can be happy, right? Even though it's a lot of, booty juice basketball that we see on night to night, our two best players on the starting five are the two guys we drafted in 2021. So it is not their fault. They're not the reason that we are losing games. It's not them. It is not saying it's any individual's fault. I think it's a collective, but the fact that Alp and Jalen are leading kind of that starting unit when it relates to impact is really significant. It also speaks to the depth at their positions. And you think about it, we don't have a elite center rotation like we do with the wings, and we don't have really guard. Our guard rotation is kind of trash right now. I'm not going to lie. We have good guards, but it's a lot of redundancy. A lot of them have the same weaknesses, whether it's shooting or decision making. And Reed is young. Aaron Holiday, he gives you good minutes. I actually like how he's playing this year. But that is something. Think about what do you need at the deadline? I think we need a guard. So that's a guard and a big. And so these are some things that kind of inform me about what we need to do. Now, when you look at it from a kind of a big picture view, you can see I made this gradient of looking at which players are hard to sub to easy to sub. So hard to sub mean that if you take these players off the court, you're going to lose the game probably. Right, you're going to lose the game if they're not playing significant amount of minutes and from the starting five. And then easy to sub are guys that if they're off the court, you're probably going to be winning. So it's kind of funny. Fred is easy to sub right now. So when you're thinking about the patterns of Ime and some of the stuff that people question about, like why is Sengun not on the court when we're closing? You guys are right. Why is Jalen sitting for 10 minutes? You guys are right. The team is not good when those two aren't out there. Like they need to be playing a lot. And I don't question Ime's methodology. I assume that he has some rationale for why he's doing things. He knows things we don't. I don't know Sengun's conditioning level. I don't know, Jalen. I don't know. But to me, it's pretty apparent to see from the outside looking in, those guys should be on the court as much as possible. I think the over reliance on Fred VanVleet, it did, like yesterday against the Wizards, we struggled to get into offensive sets. Any other, like a decent team would have killed us. But they have to learn. Like I said, when he benched them late in those games and they sat against the Warriors and we lost, like you got to let these kids figure it out. And I think Ime panics sometimes with his lineups. He gets tunnel vision, gets lost in them. He needs to let him loose. Like if you do it now, it'll pay off in the end. And I think we're starting to see some of that come along. But I think Dylan has been good. And if you have something, like a player you would want to see about, be replaced in the lineups. When we looked at the best lineups, they replaced basically Jabari and Fred with Amen and Tari. So there you go. You can see it why those are our best lineups, because it has two of your best, most impactful starters. You have Dylan Brooks, who's been really, really impactful. Then you add two of your best bench players, and voila, you have a lineup that's destroying teams by 90 points per possession. So nothing too complex there to grasp. Now, I did want to isolate on one of our players. Obviously, Tari Eason has been hooping these past few games, really all season. Wanted to isolate on him just to kind of pick apart some of the things I think he's doing well. Now, he's having a similar impact to what Amen did last year, but he's doing it while also being a very impactful offensive player, which Amen was not. I think Amen's last season, one thing I looked at similar data in transition. Amen was getting, like, when he was on the court versus off the court, it was like a 60%. It was like the percentile. We went from like a bottom of the league transition team to one of the top in the NBA just by his presence alone. Tari's impact is not that wide as it relates to transition, but it is not just because of him, but because the team is just overall better from last year in that aspect. But when he is off the court, our transition frequency is 15.2%, which will be bottom third in the NBA. And transition off offensive rebounds, off rebounds, period, not offensive, off rebounds, 27.1%, which is bottom third again. When he's on the court, our transition frequency jumps up to 17.2%, which is going to be, in the top 25% of teams in NBA. And then transition off rebound is a little bit right in the middle. So he does help us move those percentiles up. He's moving. And I think, some of the impact he has is really based off of his ability to impact the game in transition. When he gets out there, he causes chaos. And here's my theory. And this will go towards the Fred VanVleet hurting the team right now, Jabari a little bit, but mostly Fred, and why Tari and Amen are so impactful. Here's my theory. And it's not really a theory. It's pretty proven in data. When we are in a half-court setting, our offensive numbers are ugly. The shooting is bad. It's not, even though the points per possession, they're tricky, and it's late in the season. Early in the season right now, a lot of that data is noisy. But just from watching the games, our half-court offense is so predictable. It's easy to guard. It's just not good right now. That's what all the fans are complaining about. And the problem is that one way we use to counter a bad half-court offense is by getting stops and getting out in transition. If you watch when the Rockets play, even when Tari or Amen Thompson are on the court, when they get stops and they give the ball to the point guard, Fred VanVleet, guess what he does? He walks the ball up the court. And what that immediately does is it stops the offensive transition and goes now into a half-court situation, which is now feeding into the bad offense, right? Not saying that he is doing anything wrong, but the fact that we can't shoot in the half-court, we don't generate great offense in the half-court, the more half-court opportunities that we get, the more inefficient our offense is going to be. Whereas we are one of the better teams in transition scoring, especially with Tari and Amen on the court. So the more we get into transition, it mitigates some of those half-court possessions. So if I was a coach for the Rockets, I would tell them, hey, guys, when you get the ball, you need to go. It's not because that we are just like, it's really a necessity at this point. We do not want teams to get set, because once they do, that means we have to run the offensive set, and then it's bad for us. We want teams to attack. We want to attack teams running in transition. It's better for everybody. It's better for Sengun, Jalen. It's better for Jabari. It's better for Tari, for Amen. It's better for Dylan. Everybody, you can attack mismatches, defenses, and set. Fred tends to really slow the game down. He really walks the ball up the court, even on stops. And to me, that is one of the most impactful reasons why his numbers aren't great, because we're not great in half court. He needs to run with the team, and I think that's been the problem. When you take Fred off the court, guess what? You're replacing him with Amen or Tari or these guys that like to run in transition. You have more transition opportunities. And I think for Tari Eason, not only with his shooting, I think he's shooting close to 39%, 38% from three. His ability to get in transition and run, and his ability to do that with the lineups that involve Amen Thompson and Jalen and Sengun have really been great. It is Amen and Tari have been impactful, but it's by far Tari Eason has been the more impactful, better player. Even though they pair as a duo, when you look at it, I mean, they have games where they synergize together. Amen has not been great on offense this year. His decision making has been bad. His offense has just been bad, just been poor. His defense has been good for the most part, but when he is out there with Tari Eason, it's lights out because Tari pushes, he pushes, so they do work off of each other. It is not an equal relationship. It's not like Tari and Amen and Tari. It's Tari. It's Tari, and then Amen feeds off of that, and then you add in Sengun, and they really have something. And here's where the Sengun part comes in. So Tari sets a tone on the running and transition, and Amen Thompson can feed off of that because he is also a defender that gets stops, steals, rebounds. So now you have two guys that do that. So that helps your lineup a lot. What Sengun does, he mitigates the weaknesses that they have. In the event that the team that is they're going against stops their transition, now instead of that worst lineup with Amen and Jabari and all these like Fred and all these guys that can't really play in the half court by themselves, when you put Sengun, Tari, and Amen, you have a team that can run. But if all else fails, and then you go out there and you get into a set where you dump off the ball to Sengun, you're putting two guys in Amen and Tari that can cut off of him. That adds an extra layer to our half court offense. So between them running as a team and then being able to add a dimension of cutting, of movement with those two connector pieces that they are, it mitigates some of the issues we have in the half court. And that is why that trio is going to be, and we're going to look at right now the best three-man lineups with Tari Eason. The trio of Tari Eason, Alperen Sengun, and Amen Thompson plus 37.6 is the best three-man lineup with featuring Tari Eason. It's those two, and that's for the reason. Amen runs with them, and Sengun can help him in the half court. Or the team. Amen runs, Sengun is the half court guy. So you get a balance of, okay, we're going to run. Let's go. Okay, now we're not running. Team stopped us. We got to run a set. Get a ball to Sengun. Let me cut. Let me flare out. Let me get a three. I'm going to hit my three. Let me cut backside like Amen does from the weak side. Let me get a lob, a dunk. It just opens up the game for them. So ideally, at some point in time, we got to keep these three dudes together on the court. We got to keep these three dudes together. The second most impactful Tari lineup is Tari, Dillon Brooks, and Amen Thompson. And so for the same reasons, you got guys that can run, Dillon can shoot. Dillon is making the shots right now, and their defensive synergy between those three when they're able to switch, I mean, you really don't have nothing. You switch from Amen to Tari to Dillon, you're just in hell right there. So plus 32.7. The next three lineup is going to be Tari, Amen, and Tari, Sengun, and Dillon Brooks, which is a plus 29. Similar reasons for Amen Thompson. This one is good because Sengun is flanked by two shooters that are able to make their shots. Dillon's at 35%, Tari at 38, 39%. The fourth lineup is Fred, Tari, and Sengun. Once again, this is the lineup that involves Fred in the half court. Tari Eason's offense has really, really been great. Even though he doesn't run as much as the other lineups, with this lineup, Fred has basically all he needs. You still get the cutting. When he is on, he can shoot a little bit. The decision making is a little better. You're going to take care of the ball. So in aggregate, just this lineup kind of is a settled down lineup. And then the last three is Dillon, Jalen, and Tari Eason at plus 18.9. So features, to me, I mean, I can count and see all the repeated players. You got Sengun 3 times. You got Dillon, 3 times. You got Fred once. You got Amen two times and Jalen once. So if I'm prioritizing pairings, keeping Tari Eason and Sengun together, Tari Eason, Sengun, and Amen Thompson together, Tari Eason, Sengun, Amen Thompson, and Dillon Brooks, Tari Eason, Amen Thompson, Dillon Brooks, and then Sengun, and then Jalen Green or Fred VanVleet. I would say it gotta be Jalen right now. It gotta be Jalen. But the problem with that lineup is that then the ball guard, the point guard play really, really suffers. The turnovers and things like that. I mean, so this is just stuff you got to look at when you're trying to really figure out these lineups and what works with what. Now, we all know in basketball there's politics. You know what I mean? Ime and them know this data. The Rockets know this. They see this. They have much more in-depth and much more scientific and all these great measures to show them about who pairs with what and the efficiency. So they know this. But at the end of the day, it's still only 11 games. You want to be able to see this through and see if it improves. When you get to 20 games, 30 games, if they haven't really made any moves to progress the team, then I have to believe that this season they're not really ultimately serious about making the playoffs. Because to me, it's screaming right now. Like, you know what you have to do. We already know what our limitations are. We know what the limitations are. In the half court, we can't shoot. We don't have an offensive structure. We're a pretty good transition team. We're a good defensive team. We turn teams over a lot, right? So that allows us to play certain lineups in certain ways. I think what they need to be able to add is shooting. That's the number one thing. Add shooting. If it's not going to come from inside the team, you got to go external to the team to do so. In the meantime, try to lean on what you actually do well, right? Try to get out more in transition, get guys that are going to run, encourage Fred to run. If Fred gets back to his shooting ways, he is going to be a great asset to the team. I actually think, like, I'm not super worried about him. I think at some point he'll just even out. I am a bit concerned that he's already hurt early. Not sure how I feel about him having hamstring tightness this early on in the season. If that's going to be the case, then we truly need to deviate from a heavy reliance on Fred VanVleet, where he's playing 37 minutes while other guys are playing 30 and 29. Like, let's lean into the JG and Sengun thing. Let's lean into Tari and Amen getting starter minutes. Let's lean into it. And for Jabari, I think Jabari, his place right now, honestly, he needs to be paired with people that are going to help him run. My theory about why Jabari's struggling is kind of in line with everything else I just said. If he's running in transition, when you're running in transition as a player, anybody can score because there's so many mismatches. The defense isn't set. So he's able to be effective in that way when we're running and getting stops, right? When we get stops and we're pushing fast and we're have a high pace. Remember, there's a difference between transition, which is actually transition, like get a stop and run, and pace. You could walk the ball up the court or you could jog the ball up the court and still have good pace. Pace is pretty much how many seconds come off the shot clock before you get into your shot, your action, and then go, right? Pace is good. We need to increase the pace, but pace is not transition. Our pace right now preludes us to a lot of turnovers, which is fine, but we need to increase our transition. Now, the transition, you got to run in transition. That means run on every stop. If they stop you, then get into your sets. Now, we don't want to be dragging out the pace to late, 6 seconds and all that, but get into your shots. For Jabari in the half court, because our offense is not structured, the decision-making amongst the guards is not great. He is a very dependent player upon the initial action that truly doesn't involve him. He kind of gets marginalized, and that's some of it. He got to hit his shots when he gets those outlet passes and make the most of it. A lot of times it's hard for him to get in the rhythm with that, right? So when he is out there with guys that do run, he's able to get, transition buckets, attack mismatches. So it's a bit easier for him. I'm saying all that to say, if the starting five is going to involve Fred VanVleet, right? To me, if you want to maximize Jabari, take him off the starting five because he's not going to be in the action. He's not. The only time he's in the action is when he is playing the five. And guess where he can play the five at? Off the bench, right? He can play the five off the bench where he can be in the screen action, where hopefully at some point they'll start doing some pick and pops and some short rolls to get him some mid-range shots, right? Put him at the five, groom him for that backup five where our guards are ultimately going to be calling screens. And he needs to learn how to screen because he's going to need it, right? He doesn't set good screens. That probably is the reason why he doesn't play a lot of five unless for defensive purposes. But offensively, I think there's a lot of potential there for him at the five because it puts him in that Sengun position where he's in the middle of everything. He can touch the ball and be part of the offensive plan and maximize his play. That is just my opinion on the matter. I think otherwise, if he's not on those lineups that like to run like our bench does in the starters, he's really not providing a lot of value right now where you can get a men or even more preferentially Tari Eason to do the same. These are my opinions. This is what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments and in the chat. If you like this video, make sure you hit the like button. If you're new to the channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Keep rocking with the Chop Shop, and we're going to keep dropping that. Bye.
DJ Candlestick. It's the Chop Not Slap Show.